Chapter 190. Part 5 of 6. Well, great, now we're back to square one, I said. Then I guess we'll just have to narrow it down as we go. Let's move on to the snake fishman rape. Fake Flo's eyes lit up and we once again appeared back in the anteroom place. It is time for a warning. I mentioned earlier that some beings you meet might be hostile. In this realm, emotional pain is more significant than physical pain. What you went through with the Naga might cause something to happen here. I'll be on guard, I said with a nod. Will you be able to help me? All I can do is remind you that nothing you see here is real. That said, while the apparitions themselves might not be real, there are real consequences for what happens here. Hostile entities can take on many forms. Some are beneficial to defeat. Others could be detrimental. You must decide whether to leave something be or make sure it can no longer affect you. Wouldn't the obvious choice be to leave it be? I ask. You once held the idea that one should never take a life. Thou shalt not murder. You will be confronted with the decision you made. And then there was the rape, which might well spawn demons of its own. Weird that the other rape scene didn't, but I guess that wasn't as horrifying, just slightly more traumatic. Well, let's do it. Her eyes lit up again and we appeared standing on the wall above the hostile Naga encampment. The other me was standing a few meters away, looking into the camp. Before, my eyes were useless at night and I could barely see a thing. Now, I could plainly see the fear on my face. My hand was gripping the dagger so tightly it was shaking. Finally, my fake's wings rose and the other me jumped off the side, silently landing among a group of soldiers. My real wings lifted and the real me joined him. My guide did not follow us. Watching me standing over the Naga was eerie. I could see the conflict on my face. I didn't want to do it. But I had offered my services, I had promised Pinky I would help, and I was already in too deep to back out. After what felt like forever, my original self knelt down and wasted no more time. Almost immediately after the Naga's throat was slit, his eyes very obviously lost their light. The other me continued quickly, not wanting to see it. Yet I couldn't make myself look away. Was it worth it? I finally asked. Was it? The dead Naga whispered back. You murdered us all. No warning. No attempts to talk. You slit our throats in our sleep and then burned our families alive. The other Naga were depending on me. I made a deal with them. Was it worth it? Another dead Naga whispered, the next one I had slain. There was a single survivor to your massacre. You became a hero overnight, yet all you felt was hollowness. Was it worth it? The third asked. I had a family. I had a hope of a better life. I never threatened you or yours. I just wanted to fight for a place. You were attempting to steal a home that was not yours. I was told only one side of the story and honestly didn't see a need to bother getting the other side. You justify your crimes, the fourth said. Yet even you have to ask yourself, was it worth it? What other choice did I have? Doing nothing? Because the Naga didn't exactly seem like they were in a hurry to let any of us leave. They wanted help to deal with you. In exchange, they offered to let us all go. Dealing with the known evil seemed like a much better idea than risking talking to someone who might slice me in half the instant I show my face, especially given most Nagas seem to innately mistrust winged beings. You could have offered parley, the fifth said. You could have offered to negotiate. A neutral third party could have helped form an alliance, allowing peace between the two clans. If you were interested in peace, you should have come in peace. This was a war band. Was it worth it? I honestly don't know. And I can safely say that I probably never will. I can ask myself what could have been all day and every day. But I need to start living in reality. And the reality is that I did kill you. Whether or not it was worth it will never be a fact, a part of reality. It will always be subjective. And to be honest, it's a subjective point that I don't think I'll ever reach a conclusion about. This was the first time I killed something sapient. I probably could have looked for a better solution, but given the information I had and the choices I was presented, I chose what I thought would be the most advantageous to me and the people I wanted to help. It caused a stain on my soul. Hell, it literally caused me to be haunted. There are more desirable results, surely. But more realistic results? I don't think anybody could answer that. One way or another, a bloodbath was always possible. I just did my best to make it as one-sided as possible. It led to Celestia forcing you into Egypt, the guide said. Did it? It seems to me that her mind was already made up. This was just the excuse she used. If I hadn't done it, I'm sure she would have found a way to get me there anyway. And if it wasn't Egypt, it would have been something equally as unpleasant, like spending extra time with Twilight or Luna. You murdered us, all the dead Naga whispered. And our families. I did, I said. And I do regret it. That doesn't mean I would change my mind, given the choice. I realize now it's an option that was always there. I can regret something even if I wouldn't change it. I can long for what could have been even if I wouldn't change what was, but I can't keep letting it haunt me forever. This event changed who I was as a person. I will never forget the things it taught me. But it's time to let my pain go. One of the dead Naga grabbed my leg. I kicked him right in the face and tried taking off. My wings vanished just as the flames started erupting further into the camp. The other dead Naga were starting to rise, all staring at me with lifeless eyes. I tried to will a sword into my hands, but dream rules were not in effect. They were all packing weapons of their own and began advancing, holding their blades up menacingly. I fucking booked it, sprinting toward the camp entrance. The living Naga were waking up to the ash and dust. Their frantic snaky movements slowed me down from trying to get away from the dead, who didn't seem bothered by their living brethren. So what happens if I die in here? I asked as I sprinted. My guide was easily keeping pace, so it wasn't difficult for her to reply. You risk getting stuck in this memory, repeating it over and over, until you manage to break free. Fucking super. So, you feel like pulling me out now? I can't yet. This must reach a conclusion. You may be ready to move on, but those who haunt you resist that decision. Should you successfully repel them, it is possible to free them into the afterlife. That would have been nice to know a few minutes ago. It seemed like trying to fight the undead would be counterproductive, especially since there were a ton of them and each was armed. As the fires started killing more, the charred victims began rising as well. Thankfully, the camp wasn't all too large. It didn't take me long to see the gates. The problem was the pitched battle happening just inside those gates. The friendly Naga were cutting down everyone who attempted to flee the fire. As I got closer, I saw a hostile Naga getting very close to one of the friendlies. Right before it could stab what I realized was Ames, the other me shot it. As soon as that Naga went down, Ames looked straight at the real me. "Brothers, defend our companion," he roared, pointing his sword at me. They all looked my way. It took them a few seconds to see me, but they finally all lifted their weapons and shouted battle cries. "Your memories have hostiles, and they have friendlies," the fake Flo said. "Those you impacted positively can always come to your aid." The friendly Naga were currently cutting a path straight toward me. Given that the resistance was spotty, they had no trouble making it to my side right as the undead got close enough to start attacking. Ames pressed a dagger into my hand and joined his brothers in the fight. "What happens if the hostile spirits die?" I ask. "I can't answer that question," Flo said. "But you have to make a decision. Will you allow it to happen? Will you help? Or will you put a stop to the killing?" Zecora once told me that violence begets violence. To be honest, I've found that for the most part, she's right. I regret what I did even though I wouldn't change it. But moving forward, I don't have to make the same choices. I don't have to kill indiscriminately. I dropped the dagger and looked over to the undead. We don't have to fight anymore. I think I've learned my lesson from this. I'm sorry for what I did to you. You don't have to forgive me if you don't want to, but I don't think you'll get much out of haunting me anymore. I'm over it. I don't know if that satisfied them or not, but my guide's eyes lit up and we appeared in darkness, darker than the nearly pitch-black light we just left. When my eyes finally adjusted, I could tell we were in a cave. A female Naga was pacing outside of what looked like a set of rooms. When I got closer to her, I realized it was the one who raped me. She seemed very nervous. I never learned her name, I said. She did something awful to me and I ensured something awful would happen in return, yet I never even cared to learn her name. Why would you? Pain asked. She hurt you. There's no reason to care about her. She put you in a very bad place, Fear said. And did quite a lot to exacerbate your fear of relationships. And yet the helplessness sparked something in you, Anger quietly said. I'm not really sure why the place was so dark, given he was made of flames, but I guess that's coma logic for you. It wasn't very nice for someone you helped save to use you like that. Especially given that she lied about it later. I have a feeling watching some of these memories isn't going to be fun, I said as the Naga finally got over herself and slid into the room. I knew that what she did to me deserved punishment, but I don't think it deserved death. It wasn't my choice to make, and yet you could have prevented it, Pain said. You knew you could have stopped it had you but tried. The Naga likely would have allowed exile, had you requested it. But you didn't care enough, did you? I might have been able to get exile, but I just as easily might not have. Her crime was a serious one. I wanted revenge, but I didn't think they might actually decide to kill her until it was too late. Why do you care? Anger asked. She can't hurt another. Is that not good? She used you to satisfy her carnal desires, Fear said. All she sought was a feeling of dominance, of power. She raped you with no remorse or questions of wrongdoing, with a conscience clear enough to lie about it later. She threw you under the bus as soon as she had the chance, Anger said. She told them you took advantage of her. You're lucky you had the key, or proving your innocence would have been impossible. It could just as easily have been you that died. Why make excuses for someone who hurt you? Who did such awful things to you without a second thought? Revel in her death. I feel like that mindset is destructive, I said. I can't keep glorifying death and killing. It does solve problems and it does feel good, but blood begets blood. There were ways to punish without killing. And better, there are ways to rehabilitate. What she did made me angry, but I never wanted her dead. I am glad she can't hurt anyone anymore, but now she also can't help anyone anymore. You walk a dangerous path, Fear said. I'm doing my best to walk a path where fear and pain no longer have such powerful sway over my mind. Anger is something I've long been missing, but you two have been doing nothing but holding me back. That said, I can't just be indiscriminately angry. I need to relearn when it's necessary. I had a righteous fury brewing inside of me after this, but I let it stew instead of sharing it. I chose to let this rape happen instead of standing up for myself. And that's what pisses me off the most. I know that I could have avoided this. All I had to do was, anything. Yell. Fight back. Run. But I chose to lie there and let her use me. That was fear taking complete control of me. You give me a valuable perspective, but I'm done taking orders from you. And I think I'm finished with this memory. End of Part 5.